This is a 45-minute session. You are at the session entitled Storytelling and Advocacy 101, Turn Your Story into Action. As you all know, part of our role is to educate the public and raise awareness about NBIA disorders. And that's what telling your story is all about. Some of you have been on local news, and some of you have lobbied the halls of Congress and also your state legislature. We are very lucky to have two pros tell us how they do it. Their names are Christina Brundage and Lindsay Cundiff. They are both rare disease legislative advocates. Christina has idiopathic hypersomnia, which is a rare sleep disorder. She has lobbied legislators and is a member of the Hypersomnia Foundation's Patient Advisory and Advocacy Council. Welcome. And Lindsay is, I believe, Associate Director of Patient Engagement at Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases. Coincidentally, right after she took that job, her father was diagnosed with a rare disorder, myasthenia gravis, which my mother also has. So rare diseases touch many people. So I'd like now to turn the program over to our speakers and remind you that if you have questions, please place them in the chat. I will read them and our experts will answer them. Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. We are so happy to be here today for your session on Storytelling and Advocacy 101, Turning Your Story into Action. My name is Lindsay Cundiff, and I am the Associative Director of Patient Engagement at the Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases. And I have my co-pilot here today with us, Christina from the Young Adults program that we run from YAR. Christina, say hi.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks, Christina. She'll be joining us again further into our presentation. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for inviting us. So before I get started, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about myself and what I do at Every Life. I am originally from Eugene, Oregon, and I moved to the Bay Area in California about 15 years ago or so. And I started at the Every Life Foundation almost 5 years ago when the organization was still based in Novato, California. We now are currently in DC. We're DC based. I still work remotely. My role at Every Life is to work with the patient community directly and ensure that our patient programs, some of which you will hear of today, are staying relevant to what each of you need in regards to our legislative efforts. When I first started at Every Life, however, I knew nothing about public policy or legislation or even rare disease. But about 2 weeks after my original start date, my father, who's pictured here, was diagnosed with a rare condition called myasthenia gravis. I still even stumble upon the words, you know, rare diseases are always so hard to say. So I know that sounds like a huge coincidence when I'm telling my story, but when I tell my story to legislators, I like to point out that it's not much of a coincidence if you consider that 1 in 10 Americans has a rare disease. That's just a little bit about me. So for today, I just want to kind of run you through quickly what we're going to be talking about. So I will clue everyone into what the organization Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases is and what our mission statement is. And today we're going to focus on just one of the public policies that Every Life is focusing on for this year. We're going to focus on the STAT Act. We don't have time to go over all of them, so we're just going to pick this one. We'll also spend a little bit of time talking about our patient programs, specifically the Rare Disease Legislative Advocates. These are programs that you yourself can participate in. We will also talk about the young adult representatives of RDLA, which is YAR, which is where Christina is coming from. And you'll meet Christina and you'll hear a little bit more about her personal story and what connects her to the rare disease community. and also what her experience was at one of our lobbying day events called Rare Across America. And then we, of course, have an invite to you to our other lobby event called Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. That is coming up in July. We want to make sure you know everything about that event so you can join in if you'd like. And then we will close out with the Rare Artist Contest, which is another great way to participate in advocacy. I'll run you through that contest. And then we will open it up to questions and hopefully hear an example of an advocate telling their rare story, and we're going to help you connect that to a legislative ask. Again, happy to be here today. So the Every Life Foundation, who are we? What do we do? So we are dedicated to empowering the rare disease patient community to advocate for impactful science-driven legislation and policy that advances the equitable development of and access to life-saving diagnosis and treatment and cures. So I know it's a little bit of a mouthful for a mission statement. What that really means is we are in the business of saving and improving lives for the rare disease community. The Every Life Foundation looks for policy that will benefit the rare disease community on a whole. We don't just represent one rare disease community, we assist everyone and anyone who's connected to rare. We also provide training and education and resources for advocates so that they can get their voices heard.
When I was studying molecular biology at UCLA, I realized that a lot of the genetic disorders were really at the final stage where you could go after treatment. And I really wanted to treat something that had never been treated before. Started that first infusion, I talked about all the history, 30 years of history, to come to one moment in time. You start that infusion and the exhilaration of having sort of finished a relay race.
We're getting inquiries from people around the world who had been hearing about our enzyme therapy work. Well, what a difficult challenge. How do you say yes to people and how do you say no to other people? Because saying no to people could be saying to them that they're never going to treat and your child's going to die. There's nothing else you can do that is more uplifting and compelling than being there in the room treating a patient for the first time. That has consumed me and what I've been trying to do since that time.
There is that special bond then between those who are hoping to get treated and those trying to develop the treatments. That even if it doesn't work, that we know that we're there trying to do it, and you're there at least knowing that someone is trying.
It became obvious to him, and he was the first one I've ever heard verbalize it, that the rare voice is unheard, and we all have a very strong voice, but it's individual.
When I first started 10 years ago, most knew nothing about rare diseases. One actually joked and said, "Oh, rare diseases, that's where you can't drink diet soda."
What gets me moving towards Every Life at the very beginning was the reality of letting others know they may not have the same disorder, but they have the same drive. And together, we really can move mountains.
We were very successful at our very first lobby day. We actually got 5 provisions into the FDA user fee reauthorization. We were able to bring even more advocates. The next year we had our first legislative conference, and then we were able to really start the movement for the 21st Century Cures legislation. And over the years, we grew and we grew and we grew. We're now here in 2019. We plan to have 450 advocates from 49 different states.
Together, we represent over 7,000 diseases, and that's 30 million people.
You have the entire community of people who are affected by rare diseases.
Other people that understand what I'm going through.
A whole bunch of different people from all walks of life working on the same goals.
We all are in the same space.
When you come to one of the events and you see this is where they're organized, this is where everyone realizes we can make a difference.
Our goal is to connect every member of Congress with a rare disease patient who lives in their district, because we want members of Congress to not think about rare diseases as this abstract thing. You don't need to be an expert in rare disease legislation. You don't actually need to know anything about legislation or policy or politics. All you need to know is your personal story.
Advocacy can take many forms, and there's no right or wrong way to speak out.
My diagnosis wasn't the end of my story, even when I thought that it was.
We give a family a chance at hope and at life.
People's lives are counting on us.
Cheers to cure!
All right.
I see Every Life as the organization that changed not something, but changed everything.
Find your voice. Tell your story. It matters.
Every voice.
Every voice.
Every voice.
Every voice. Every voice.
Every voice. Every voice
matters.
I just love that video. I just think it's such a great, the video says it better than I would be able to say it. So it's such a great snapshot of what Every Life does, and every voice matters. It's true. So now you have a little background and can see a lot of how Every Life was originated, and you can see why we do the work that we do to empower the patient community in building an impactful voice in policymaking, drug development, and the regulatory decision making. That said, Every Life Foundation looks at public policy that will benefit the rare disease community on a whole. And this year, we're focused on several policy initiatives, like I mentioned before, but for the interest of time, we don't have time to go through all of them. Today, we'll just be focusing on the STAT Act. So in a minute here, I'm gonna break down the bill just a little and show you how you can get involved, but also wanna stress that the goal for today is not to ensure that you understand the STAT Act inside and out, but rather use this legislation as a framework for turning your story into action. That's really what we're here for today. That's what the exercise is about today. So don't worry if after I say my spiel on the bill, if there's still questions, we're here for you. Just like the video said, you do not have to be an expert to get involved in advocacy. So, okay, what is the STAT Act? So as you may or may not know, the average development for a rare disease drug takes around 15 years. That is too long for us in the rare disease community. The STAT Act, or HR 1730 and S 670, is a bipartisan community-led bill aimed at improving the development of and the access to therapies for the rare disease community. The STAT Act seeks to enact targeted, impactful, and attainable policy reforms at the FDA to accelerate development of therapies across the spectrum of rare diseases and disorders and facilitate patient access to such therapies. The STAT Act will improve rare disease coordination, stakeholder engagement, and policy development within the FDA by expanding existing authority to create a rare disease center of excellence, inform rare disease policies and action by creating a rare disease and condition drug advisory committee, fund the regulatory science and related activities to support development of therapies to treat very small rare disease populations or ultra rare. And the STAT Act will strengthen rare disease patient access to FDA approved therapies in public and commercial plans. You could also think of this bill as our community needing therapies stat. I'm just going to break down a little bit further. So there are 4 components all connected to the FDA Center of Excellence. Number 1 is that advisory committee. This committee will advise the Health and Human Service Secretary on policies to address barriers impending development of and access to rare disease therapies. They will consider regulatory pathways, clinical trial design, qualification of biomarkers, drug repurposing, and other issues involving the drug review process. The committee will be no more than 15 people appointed by the secretary, comprised of a wide spectrum of experts and rare disease patient representatives. That second tier, the ultra rare, that's accelerating life-saving therapies and treating ultra rare disease entities. This is through the Altitude program, which will make recommendations to address regulatory science and public policy challenges to the development of treatments for very small populations. The recommendations will focus on manufacturing standards, trial design, regulatory flexibilities, and manufacturing needs. And the second consideration for this ultra rare tier are the grants and contracts for development of drugs for rare diseases and conditions. That brings us to my third tier, the access component. This proposal seeks to enhance coverage of drugs, biologic and gene cell-based therapies to treat rare diseases and disorders. So payer coverage policies reflect the totality of information used by the FDA to determine a drug's indicated usage and population. So that all comes back to the FDA Center of Excellence. So although each of the more than 7,000 rare diseases are different, they face many of the same challenges in successful therapeutic development, right? An inter-center institute, or the Center of Excellence, will focus on these unique challenges across rare diseases, providing solutions that can benefit therapeutic development for many communities. This approach has proven successful for the cancer patients with the establishment of the Oncology Center of Excellence in 2017. So we're drawing upon an example that's worked in the past. The Rare Disease Center of Excellence will build rare disease knowledge and expertise to inform review divisions and provide additional supports as needed to review staff while developing and furthering policies to support rare disease therapy development and access. The Center of Excellence will serve as the FDA's coordinating office with rare disease stakeholders, implement cross-center rare disease and condition-focused meetings and policy development, and coordinate regulatory science initiatives for rare disease. Okay, so what will the FDA Center of Excellence actually do? So the Center of Excellence will leverage the combined skills of regulatory scientists and reviewers with expertise in major disease areas and drugs, biologics, and devices, that's including diagnostics. They will help expedite the development of medical products and support an integrated approach in the clinical evaluation of drugs, biologic, and devices for the treatment of major disease areas, and work with the Center for Drug Evaluation, or CDER, the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, CYBER, or the Center of Devices and Radiology Health, as well as other offices across the FDA. The Center of Excellence will convene stakeholders from the rare disease community to consider potential changes to labels for rare disease therapies approved under the accelerated approval or breakthrough therapy pathways. Following this meeting, the commissioner will issue guidance to propose changes to how product labels for rare disease demonstrate clinical benefits and reflect relevant scientific data, including surrogate endpoints. So the way I also like to think about it is in relation to your own treatment or your own care team, right? Like we all don't have just one physician that we refer to get the best level of care, right? You probably have a whole team of specialists behind you. You might have a physician with whom your family has worked with this entire time, or a pediatrician or a neurologist that you also see, or also a orthopedist or a gastrologist and clinical geneticists, right? You have a whole team of experts. That's kind of like how the FDA Center of Excellence would be like. Okay, so I know I just did a lot of heavy policy talk and language, which I know is a lot, but you may have listened to that and you're like, okay, well, that's great, Lindsay, but now what? So if the STAT Act resonated with you personally, or perhaps you've done your own research on another legislative bill and you are ready to support it, what are the next steps that you can take as an individual advocate or as a member of a patient organization? Well, there's several things you can do. And most organizations that are supporting a bill will make it very easy for you. They've done a lot of the work for you. So they will generally have a site that you can go to that will have all of these action items for you already set up. Super easy. Some of the ways you can participate in legislation you can do in person, like meeting members of your Congress, or you can do it from your very own bedroom. So for example, contacting your member of Congress through letters or sign-on letters, or of course meeting with them in organized lobbying days, just like RDLA does. Sign-on letters, patient organizations, for example, we're still looking for patient organizations to sign on to the STAT Act letter, for example. You can also, of course, use social media. And for example, like I just said, for the STAT Act, if you're interested in getting involved in that specific bill, you can go to everylifefoundation.org/STAT Act/take action. And you'll see prompts to contact your member of Congress, sign on to the STAT Act letter if you're a patient organization, or using social media. We have a whole toolkit that you just download and then can upload things automatically to your Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is that you use. The second part of the turning your story into action is, how do you take a policy or legislation like the STAT Act and connect it to your own personal story? So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how to do that. So meet Clara, for example. Clara is age 6. She has GM1 gangliosidosis. It's a progressive and curable fatal disease. And she is nonverbal. She can no longer use her arms or her hands. And she eats primarily through a feeding tube because she can't chew or swallow without that assistance. Clara needs therapy STAT. With the STAT Act, promising clinical trials may bring life-saving therapies to patients just like Clara. And the STAT Act would help ensure patient access to therapies once they're approved, right? So that's Clara and how you can connect Clara's story to the STAT Act. Second example is meet Andrew and Jason. Andrew and Jason, they're both brothers. They're diagnosed with Fragile X syndrome. They struggle with anxiety and intellectual disability, communication deficits, and delayed motor development. They need therapy STAT. The STAT Act would help address some of their complex nature of therapy development for individuals just like Andrew and Jason, who have multi-systematic disorders just like Fragile X. My very last example is meet Harley. Harley has a mutation on her GNAO1 gene and is one of less 100 cases diagnosed worldwide. So this is an example of ultra rare, right? There's less than 100 cases just like Harley in the US. She is unfortunately completely nonverbal and has severe intellectual and development delays. Harley needs therapy STAT. The STAT Act would spur the development of therapies for patients like Harley who have ultra rare diseases. So I hope that helps a little, and we'll spend a little bit more time talking about that later on. So if these stories move you, or if you're starting to connect the dots of how legislation and telling my story is something that I want to be involved on my level of advocacy, I cannot preach about our program RDLA enough. This is a great program for any level of advocate, whether you're new to advocacy or you're a longtime veteran and have been, involved with Every Life for the past 10 years. Rare Disease Legislative Advocates, or RDLA, has all sorts of free resources that we provide to the community, a monthly newsletter, we have actions alerts, caucus briefings, all sorts of good stuff. All of these are free. If you would like to hear more, go to rareadvocates.org. Okay, the other part of our DLA is staying informed on key policy issues. So like I said, we have monthly webinars that highlight what's the most relevant federal and state legislation currently going on in the rare disease community. RDLA serves as more of a clearinghouse for the patient community. So unlike Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases that supports policy that benefits rare disease or multi-disease communities on a whole, RDLA is a clearinghouse for advocates to come to that program and promote, gather support, talk about the legislation that might just benefit their specific disease. That's okay. It's a clearinghouse. It's a program of the Every Life Foundation, but they're a little bit separate. So sometimes people confuse that. I always like to clarify. RDLA also provides our monthly newsletter that has all the legislation that's talked about on the RDLA webinars that keep you up to date. We've got a state advocacy hub, and there's all sorts of toolkits for tip sheets and policy primers, right? The one-pagers that give the snapshot of legislation, video instruction, resources, all that good stuff. And of course, as always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll see some new news updates coming out of that social media as well. RDLA has several programs, a couple of which you will hear more in depth from Christina in a minute. There are many parts of the programming, including the monthly webinars and the Congressional Caucus briefing. We host a Rare Voice Awards once a year that highlights advocates in the community who have made achievements in this legislative climate. Rare Giving is our sponsorship program for patient organizations hosting events that feature public policy or a regulatory component to their event. It also, Rare Giving is also the program that brings rare disease patients and family members to Washington, D.C. for Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill through its travel stipends. We offer 2 opportunities for organized lobby days throughout the year, one of which is Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill, and the other is Rare Across America. And of course, YAR, our young adults programming, which Christina is going to talk to you about in just a minute. I will first add that all of these events, all of this good stuff is absolutely free. All the events, all the programming is free for patients and caregivers in the community. We do not charge for any of these events. So hope to see you at some RDLA events or programming. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to our young adult representative of RDLA, Christina.
Hi everyone, like Lindsay said, I'm Christina and I'm a part of the Speakers Bureau for YAR, and I am incredibly honored to be speaking with you today. For my entire life, I've always been tired, but I never thought there was a problem. I just thought that I was really good at sleeping. It wasn't until 2018 that I went to a sleep doctor and got the diagnosis of idiopathic hypersomnia. Hypersomnia is a chronic neurological disorder that means no matter how well I sleep, I wake up feeling like I've pulled 3 all-nighters. Since being diagnosed, I've participated in 6 clinical trials, joined the Hypersomnia Foundation's Patient Advocacy and Advisory Board, helped form a fundraiser for hypersomnia research, and increased my advocacy knowledge by joining YAR. Next slide. YAR is the young adult representatives of RDLA. We are a highly motivated group ranging from 16 to 30 years in age and are all from the rare disease community. After YAR's launch in 2018, the group has grown to over 100 members and has successfully offered over 3 dozen speaking opportunities to those in the Speakers Bureau. Our goals are to have representation in every state, increase confidence in the next generation, provide opportunities to complete community service hours and increase resume building, provide a space for young adults to learn and be supported by their peers. But our top goal is to empower the next generation of rare disease advocates to develop an impactful voice in policymaking, drug development, and the regulatory process. If you're a young adult like I am, I invite you to check out YAR. We meet monthly to discuss upcoming opportunities and check in with one another. We have our own activities during Rare Disease Week, and we have plenty of skill building opportunities throughout the year, like the Summer Series and the YAR Leadership Academy. For more information, please head to hearusyar.org, and I will put that in the chat. Speaking of Rare Disease Week, I want to invite you all to join us at the next opportunity to advocate. Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill brings together rare disease community members from across the country to be educated on federal legislative issues, meet other advocates, and share their unique stories with legislators. In February 2020, we had 900 rare disease advocates join us in DC and over 390 different meetings with members of Congress. These Hill meetings are just one of the events that takes place throughout the entire week, and this year, RDLA is hosting Rare Disease Week in July. During the event, RDLA also offers a caucus briefing, a documentary screening, the Rare Artist Reception, a young adults meetup, and a legislative conference to help you prepare for the meetings and network with other rare disease advocates in your state. For more information about the event, go to rareadvocates.org/RDW. Next slide. Your second chance to advocate this year is with Rare Across America. Rare Across America is a chance to make an impact on federal and state policy from close to your home. This is an opportunity to build relationships with your local legislators throughout the year. This event also usually takes place during July or August during the congressional summer recess, but RDLA moved it this year to the end of February because of COVID. Dedicated advocates united from across the country with over 360 meetings, taking Zoom meetings and phone calls from their living rooms, cars, porch decks, anywhere they could get reception. Stay tuned for when RDLA hosts Rare Across America in July or August 2022. Next, please. So if you're like me, the thought of speaking with legislators can be a little daunting, but I want to tell you about my first lobby day this past Rare Across America to hopefully quell any fears you may have. So I'm from South Carolina, and I scheduled meetings with both my senators and 5 of my representatives. I've never done anything like Rare Across America before, so I wasn't sure what to expect. Luckily, RDLA does an amazing job of preparing advocates with their webinars and trainings. And also through Lindsay, I was given a mentor through YAR, who my mentor experienced lobby days before and helped me even more to be prepared. My state, luckily, was very organized and met several times before the meetings to go over who was going to say what. I connect strongly with the STAT Act because hypersomnia can be a debilitating condition without treatment. And I also think it's important to research further into smaller disease communities. So I was tasked with the STAT Act as my ask. And an ask is the bill that I was asking my legislators to support. Again, RDLA does a fantastic job preparing us to speak about our asks because they provide us with one-pagers for the bills, so we know exactly what to say. When it came to the day, I was very nervous, but after the first meeting, I felt great and ready to go. For most of the meetings, we met with legislator aides who were very nice. They listened well. They asked really thoughtful questions. It made me feel like they really cared about the meeting and wanted to know what we thought, which is important because we are the people that they represent. And I feel like I've already started to build a relationship with my legislators, from calling their offices about important bills to meeting with them at Rare Across America. And with Rare Disease Week coming up, I feel like I can continue to let them know who I am and exactly why they should listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I was just saying it's my absolute favorite thing to watch an advocate who's never done any sort of lobbying before, met with a member of Congress, and watch them grow and increase their confidence in meeting with members of Congress. I mean, it is your right to meet with members of Congress, exactly like what you just said. They work for us. They represent us. So it's been a pleasure to work with you, and I'm so glad you're here today. Okay, so with that said, I also want, we very much understand at the Every Life Foundation that not everyone wants to meet with a member of Congress, or maybe they need a break from that kind of advocacy each year. Whatever it is, there's many different ways for you to tell your story and get involved in advocacy in a direction that makes you comfortable. So this program I want to talk to you about next, and it'll be the last kind of thing we talk about, is called Rare Artist. If you are an advocate or an artist that's just waiting to tap into your inner advocacy self, this is the program for you. We offer the Rare Artist Contest once a year that is for anyone in the rare disease community who's connected to rare, who's ages 4 and up. The contest usually has about 400 entries or so, and we have about 13 awardee spots. We're changing the rules slightly this year, so plenty of opportunity to get involved. And the awardees get a chance to showcase their artwork on Capitol Hill during our Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill event, which is the big event that Christina just talked to you about. Wanted to show you a quick example of one of the awardees from 2019, Donna. So this is Donna's son, Levi, and this is a photo that she took. And it's beautiful. And of course, you know, it's pretty clear the connection. It's obviously in Washington, D.C., but also look at that wonderful horizon. And I love the concept of Levi looking out into the horizon. It just seems like a world of opportunity. If you would like to know a little bit more about the contest, it is opening soon, June 1st, and it will be open for taking submissions for 6 weeks. We'll close it this year on July 16th. And participants are encouraged to tell the advocacy story through their artwork. And I think, like I mentioned before, oh, I forgot to mention, so you awardees will also receive some cash prizes. We always have cash prizes each year. And then also, of course, that opportunity to showcase and tell your story on Capitol Hill. You get a chance to speak to everyone who attends, and sometimes some Congress people show up. So it's really fun. It's lots of great stuff. Okay, and that is it for Christina and myself. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in today. If you want to know more or have any questions about advocacy or rare disease, if I don't know it, I always try to direct you to someone else who does. So you can always reach me at elcundiff@everylifefoundation.org. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciated hearing about the foundation, which I did not know about, and all the other information that y'all shared about the resources and the advocacy that you're doing. Just on a personal note, I used to cover Congress, and quite honestly, one of the few things that they really paid attention to was advocacy for real people. They would get like letters that were obviously form letters from organizations trying to drum up petitions and that sort of thing. And frankly, they just kind of threw those in the trash. What they did pay attention to were real people. And just for, you know, as a journalist, but also as a human being, we all respond to stories. And thinking back to your presentation, when you focused in on those children, I was riveted and paying full attention, because that is honestly what touched me the most. And I think it touches most people when they hear a story. I do want to remind people that if they do have questions, they can put it in the chat. I noticed that y'all put some good stuff in there, like your contact information. You've got information about the artist competition. I think I might have seen something about Rare Disease Day or Rare Disease Week.
Yeah.
Which
Hi, Mary. Yeah. Chiming in if I feel like I just posted every single link that's on our website. So you are welcome.
Yeah, that's great, because I do think it can be very intimidating to meet a member of Congress or to lobby for the first time. And I don't know if Christina wants to weigh in on the first time you do that. Like, how do you get over the jitters and get the confidence that you need to just go in there and tell your story? You want to answer that?
Yeah. So honestly, I had no idea what to expect. And I was very, very jittery my first one. But I don't know if you remember from the pictures, I think a lot of what helped me was realizing that these aides, they're my age. They're young people. So it is almost like talking to a peer when I'm going into these meetings, but also because we were virtual, they also, some of them were wearing sweatpants and sweatshirts. So that also to me made it a lot less intimidating, because going in, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to somebody who's really important, and they are important, but seeing them in almost street clothes, I think really helped taking the jitters away. And again, remembering that they work for us. Again, putting that out there, yes, they are important, but they are representing us. So they're going to listen to what we have to say.
Yeah, it's quite a revelation, at least it was for me when I covered Congress, to realize that the country was being run by 22-year-olds. And it's honestly true, folks. I was really interested in hearing about the STAT Act. That is really important to the rare disease community. And I don't know, is there a hearing set for that? And Lindsay, if you said who the sponsor of the legislation is, I missed it. Could you just tell us what the status of that is, if you know? Looks like you might be checking on that, which is great. Okay.
Checking. I'm trying to remember our leaders. I can look it up, but we have a Senate bill and a House bill. So this will be one of our biggest asks going into Rare Disease Week, which is July. I think I posted the link for STAT Act and also our Take Action page. So if people felt connected to this bill, please look at that resource and get in contact with us. We're of course looking for more support. If anyone on this call felt the bug or call to action to participate in our lobby day, we'd love for more support to rally all rare disease patients in the US. And again, of course, it's during Rare Disease Week. We also give constant updates during those RDLA calls and through our newsletters, so people can stay up to date with that. And it looks like there's maybe a question in the chat.
Yeah, that's from Sandy Leap. She is a parent and very active. Her husband Rich was on the board of the NBIA Disorders Association for a while, and she says that she had a few opportunities to go to Congress with her daughter Brittany, and she said that she felt that by having her by my side, they listened. She's no longer with us, unfortunately. And she said that she didn't know if it would be as powerful not having her in person. What do you all think?
Sandy, thank you for sharing and being here today. I know none of this is easy, and it's certainly takes a lot of bravery to go into those offices with members of Congress, but your story is still impactful, no matter where you're at in your journey in rare disease. If you're comfortable taking pictures of your family and telling the story, and that's really what you're there. I mean, Christina can testify that is really what you're there to do when you go and meet with your legislators. It's just tell your story. RDLA and our staff members help to connect those rare disease stories and the journeys that you have walked in the diagnostic journey and along the way of your treatment. We try to help connect those to pieces of legislation, so you're actually walking in with a legislative ask. Congress usually likes some sort of take action, right? There's got to be something for them to actually do when we go to those meetings, so that's how we rally the community. But regardless of where you're at, your story is valuable, it is meaningful, and I'm sorry to hear about your family member, but we're here to help rally behind you.
And I agree with what you just said. Hearing from a parent is powerful. I'm afraid that we have run out of time, y'all. Great presentation, wonderful information. I feel heartened to hear about the STAT Act, badly needed. I hope they provide incentives to pharmaceutical companies to work on rare disorders and come up with therapies for that.